Hello, friend. Tonight we're going to walk the island of Tsushima together. And I'm going to tell you the story of Sensei Ishikawa. It's a story about pride and shame, about a master and his students, about the mistakes we make when we try to control those we love, and what happens when they choose their own path. So settle in, and let me tell you about one of the island's greatest archers and the two students who would define his life. Before the Mongols came to Tsushima, before Jin Sakai became the ghost, there was a man named Sadanobu Ishikawa. He was the archery master of Clan Nagao, one of the great families of the island. The Nagao were known for their archers, legendary warriors who could strike targets from impossible distances. And Ishikawa was considered one of the finest of them all. They say he once shot a pirate captain from the shore and routed an entire fleet. They say his skill rivaled even the legendary Tadayori Nagao himself, though Ishikawa would never claim such a thing. He was proud, yes, but he knew the difference between confidence and arrogance, or at least he thought he did. Ishikawa had developed his own technique over the years, which he called the way of the bow. It wasn't just about accuracy or power. It was about discipline, control, mastery of oneself before mastery of the weapon. He believed that an archer who couldn't master their own spirit would never be a true warrior. And so when Lord Nagao asked him to train one of their clan members, a young samurai named Hironori Nagao, Ishikawa accepted with honor. Hironori was talented, perhaps too talented. He learned quickly, absorbed every lesson, every technique. Ishikawa pushed him hard, harder than any student before. He shared everything he knew about the way of the bow. But there was something Ishikawa failed to see. He was so focused on perfecting Hironori's technique that he forgot to check his student's spirit. And in that oversight, in that blind spot, pride took root. Hironori began to believe that his skill with the bow made him exceptional, that he deserved more than what he had, that he could take control of Clan Nagao himself. And so he started a rebellion. Hironori rallied followers. He used the way of the bow, Ishikawa's own teachings, to slaughter many of Clan Nagao's finest warriors. For a time, it seemed like he might actually succeed. Hironori's uprising was eventually crushed. He was executed for his betrayal, but the damage was done. Many good men were dead, killed by techniques that Ishikawa himself had taught. The clan needed someone to blame. And while they couldn't punish Hironori anymore, they could punish his teacher. To save face, Clan Nagao fabricated a story. They told everyone that Hironori had died honorably, fighting bandits. A hero's death, not a traitor's execution. It was a lie to protect his family's legacy. As for Ishikawa, he was blamed as the enabler, the fool who had shared sacred techniques with someone unworthy. He was granted mercy, allowed to resign peacefully rather than face harsher consequences. But everyone knew the truth. He had failed. And so, Sadanobu Ishikawa left Clan Nagao behind. He traveled to Hiyoshi Springs, a quiet village in the north, and built a small dojo high on a cliff overlooking the valley. There, alone with his shame, he made a vow. He would never teach again. For years, Ishikawa lived in seclusion. The people of Hiyoshi Springs knew who he was. Whispers of the disgraced archery master traveled even to small villages, but they did leave him alone. He spent his days practicing, perfecting his art. The bow was his life, and putting it down would have felt like death itself. So he continued to shoot, continued to refine the way of the bow, even though there was no one left to share it with. That is, until one day, a peasant girl climbed the path to his dojo. Her name was Tomoe. She was young, determined, and completely untrained. She told Ishikawa she wanted to learn archery, that she wanted to become a warrior to protect herself and her people from the bandits and dangers that plagued the island. At first, Ishikawa refused. He had sworn never to teach again. He told her to leave. But she kept coming back. Day after day, she would climb that path. She would ask again. And eventually, Ishikawa's pride got the better of him once more. Because Tomoe had talent. Raw, undeniable talent. When Ishikawa finally let her try the bow, he saw something special in her. A natural gift that reminded him of why he loved teaching in the first place. He convinced himself this time would be different. Tomoe was a commoner, not a noble. She had no ambitions of power or status. She simply wanted to learn. And perhaps by training her, by making her into a true warrior, he could redeem himself. He could erase the stain of Hironori's betrayal. So Ishikawa broke his vow. He took Tomoe as his second student. He taught her everything. The stance, the draw, the release, the ways to read the wind, to account for distance, to strike true even in chaos. He taught her the secret techniques of the way of the bow. The same techniques he taught Hironori. But this time he told himself he would be more careful. He would watch for signs of pride, of ambition. He would not make the same mistake twice. Tomoe learned quickly. Too quickly, perhaps. Within months, she had surpassed what most archers achieved in years. Ishikawa pushed her harder and harder, demanding perfection, testing her limits. He was harsh, unforgiving. Every mistake was met with criticism, every success with higher expectations. But he told himself it was necessary, that discipline would forge her into a true warrior. What he didn't realize was that his harshness was creating something else entirely. Because Tomoe had a secret. Before she came to Ishikawa, she had fallen in with a group of bandits. Desperate people living on the edges of society, taking what they needed to survive. When she started training with the sensei, she didn't leave that life behind. She kept one foot in both worlds. And as her skills grew, so did her usefulness to the bandits. She would use what Ishikawa taught her to help them raid travelers, to threaten villagers. The deadly accuracy he was teaching her, she was using it for the very crimes he despised. When Ishikawa finally learned the truth, he was devastated. Not again. He couldn't let it happen again. So he made a decision. A terrible decision, born from fear and shame and the desperate need to avoid repeating his past. He decided to kill her. One night, Ishikawa confronted Tomoe. He told himself it was justice, that she had betrayed his trust, that she was using his teachings for evil, that death was the punishment for common criminals. He raised his bow, drew an arrow, and aimed at his own student. But Tomoe was faster than he expected. She fought back. In the struggle, she wounded Ishikawa badly, leaving him bloodied and defeated in his own dojo. Then she fled into the night, disappearing before he could recover. This happened just days before the Mongols invaded Tsushima. When the call went out to all samurai to gather at Komoda Beach to defend the island, Ishikawa couldn't answer. He was too injured from his fight with Tomoe. He stayed behind, tending to his wounds, while the greatest battle in Tsushima's history took place without him. When Jin Sakai came looking for Ishikawa, he found the sensei still recovering. Jin needed allies, skilled warriors who could help him rescue his uncle, Lord Shimura, from Mongol captivity. And Ishikawa's reputation as an archer was legendary. But when Jin asked why Ishikawa hadn't fought at Komoda Beach, the sensei lied. He said bandits had attacked him. That's why he couldn't fight. He was too ashamed to admit the truth, that his own student had wounded him, that he had tried to murder a peasant girl for betraying him. Instead, Ishikawa told Jin about Tomoe. He said his student had been kidnapped by the Mongols and he needed to find her. In exchange for Jin's help tracking her down, Ishikawa would aid in rescuing Lord Shimura. Jin agreed. They followed her trail to Fort Nakayama, a Mongol stronghold. Ishikawa had feared the worst, that Tomoe was being held prisoner. tortured for information, or worse. But when they infiltrated the fort, they discovered something far more disturbing. Tomoe hadn't been kidnapped at all. She had joined the Mongols willingly. They found evidence everywhere. Japanese arrows used in training, scrolls with archery techniques translated into Mongolian, a private quarter clearly meant for her, not a prisoner's cage. And worst of all, they found prisoners, executed prisoners, Japanese civilians who had been killed by precise arrow shots. Quick deaths, yes, but deaths nonetheless. Tomoe had been killing her own people to prove her loyalty to the invaders. She was teaching the Mongols the way of the bow. She was giving them to the enemy. When Jin confronted Ishikawa about it, demanding to know what had really happened between them, the sensei finally told the truth. It wasn't bandits who had attacked him. It was Tomoe. He admitted he had pushed her too hard, that he had been too harsh, too unforgiving. But even as he said it, he couldn't fully accept responsibility. In his mind, Tomoe's betrayal was proof that she had always been a killer, that she had always been corrupt. Jin wasn't so sure, but together they made a new vow. They would hunt Tomoe down and stop her before the Mongol archers became unstoppable. And so the chase began. Throughout the island, Ishikawa and Jin tracked Tomoe's movements. They found her training camps, where Mongol archers practiced the techniques she taught them. They discovered ambush sites, where she had led attacks on Japanese travelers, cutting off supply lines to entire villages. Everywhere they went, they saw the evidence of Ishikawa's teachings being used against his own people. The sensei became more desperate, more ruthless. He stopped caring about honor, about the rules of warfare. He led Jin into obvious traps, willing to risk both of their lives for a chance at catching Tomoe. He used innocent villagers as scouts, getting them killed in the process. Jin began to see the darker side of his ally, the obsession, the inability to admit when he was wrong. Finally, they found her. Jin came face to face with Tomoe at a waterfall, and she told him her side of the story. Yes, she had joined the Mongols, but not because she wanted power or glory. She said she had been captured after fleeing from Ishikawa's attack on her life. The Mongols would have killed her immediately, but she offered them something valuable: knowledge of the samurai's techniques. She taught them the way of the bow to survive, to buy herself time, to gain their trust. And yes, she had killed those prisoners at the fort, but she claimed it was mercy. The Mongols tortured captives slowly, brutally. By killing them quickly with her arrows, she said she was giving them a better death than what awaited them. Was it true? Jin didn't know. Before Jin could capture her, Tomoe threw herself off the waterfall, vanishing into the waters below. He and Ishikawa assumed she was dead, but Tomoe was more resourceful than that. Months later, she reappeared, this time disguised as a peasant named Matsu, working as a trapper. She had abandoned the Mongols, or so she claimed. She told Jin that the archers she had trained were now beyond her control, plotting to attack innocent villages. She asked for help stopping them. Jin and Ishikawa were skeptical. This could be another trick, another manipulation. But if she was telling the truth, those Mongol archers represented a massive threat to Tsushima, so they agreed to help her. Together, the three of them worked to stop the Mongol archer attacks. They infiltrated enemy positions, eliminated the archers Tomoe had trained, and saved villages from destruction. And in those moments, fighting side by side, something changed. Ishikawa saw glimpses of the student he had once trained. The skill, yes, but also the determination, the courage. Perhaps buried beneath all of the betrayal and bloodshed, there was still something worth saving. Tomoe, for her part, seemed genuinely committed to stopping the destruction. Whether it was redemption she sought, or simply revenge against the Mongols, she fought with everything she had. When the battle was won, when the last of the Mongol archers had been defeated, Tomoe made her move. She had arranged for a boat to be waiting at Umugi Cove. a way off the island, a chance to escape to the mainland and start a new life away from all of this. By the time Jin and Ishikawa realized what was happening, she was already at the shore, ready to leave. Ishikawa raised his bow. One shot and he could end this. No more running, no more betrayal, just justice. Finally. But then he saw something. A letter left behind for him. In the letter, Tomoe thanked him. She thanked him for teaching her. For believing in her when she was just a peasant girl with no future. She admitted that she had judged him too harshly. That perhaps she hadn't understood the burden he carried from his past. But she also told him she couldn't stay. She couldn't be the student he wanted her to be. She needed to find her own path, make her own decisions, live her own life. She hoped that one day he might understand. Ishikawa lowered his bow. They watched together in silence as Tomoe's boat disappeared over the horizon, carrying her away from Tsushima forever. Jin expected the sensei to be angry, to rage against the injustice of it all, to demand they pursue her, but instead Ishikawa simply stood there, watching her go. Later, when Jin asked him about it, Ishikawa said something unexpected. He said he had nothing left to teach Jin about archery, but there was one lesson, the most important lesson, that he could share. Don't repeat his mistakes. You see, Ishikawa had spent his entire life trying to control his students, trying to mold them into perfect versions of what he thought they should be. When Hironori betrayed him, he blamed himself for not controlling him enough. When Tomoe betrayed him, he tried to fix it with violence. But the truth he finally understood as he watched Tomoe sail away, was that you can't control other people's choices. You can teach them, you can guide them, you can give them everything you know. But in the end, they will make their own decisions. They will walk their own path. And sometimes the greatest act of mastery isn't shooting the arrow, it's knowing when to lower the bow. Later, Sensei Ishikawa helped Jin in the final battles against the Mongols. He fought at Castle Kaneda, at Castle Shimura, and finally at Port Izumi, where Jin confronted the Khan himself. He never spoke of Tomoe again. Whether she found peace on the mainland, whether she started a new life, whether she ever thought of the island she left behind, we'll never know. But Ishikawa, the proud archer who had lost everything, trying to hold on too tight, finally learned to let go. I hope you enjoyed that story. I'm thinking about doing more like this, just kind of going over the different character stories from all kinds of games. Ghost of Tsushima, Cyberpunk, whatever it might be. Let me know if you enjoyed this. I'd love to do more. Get some rest.